Good morning. I'm sitting here in my time machine, the TARDIS. That stands for time and relative dimensions in space. But if you're a Doctor Who fan, you already know that. Anyway, today I want to cover part two of 2026, the year that everything changes. So let me see if I can share my screen and we'll get started. This will take just a minute or two. I've got to get rid of some panels so I can see what I'm doing. Almost there. Okay, and here we are, 2026, the year everything changes, part two. In part one, I covered the first 6 months of the year, and in part two, I'll cover the next 6 months. So we'll start in July. In particular, we'll start with the new moon on July 14th, 2026. I call this a two blue star day. That means there's a lot of good harmonious aspects going on. And the main things going on are the minor grand trine between Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, and another one between Jupiter, Uranus, and Neptune. And those planets are really going to be bringing higher energies into the world. By that, I mean that our brains are going to be functioning at a higher level. There will be this pressure for our minds to open up, take a more global or cosmic view of things. And some people, this is going to be manifested by breakthroughs in technology and invention, new philosophical thoughts, expanded thinking, and for a few, this can be a time of great enlightenment. There are a few hard aspects going on, a square between Uranus and Venus, and a square between Chiron and Jupiter that is in the process of fading. So I don't think they are going to have nearly as much impact as these very harmonious configurations that we see. Also, the moon is out of bounds on this day. So around this time, people will be feeling more independent, charting their own path through life at this moment. Remember, when a planet is out of bounds, that means it's gone further north or south of the celestial equator than the sun is able to. And when that happens, the drive represented by that planet functions a little bit more independently. So this is going to be a very harmonious time, and it looks like July and August are going to be filled with a lot of planetary harmony. Just a few days later, on July 17th, we have an exact trine between Uranus and Pluto. And this is going to be the first of 5 exact trines that occur over the next few years. And that is going to, again, help bring in a lot of new technology and invention into the world. There's going to be a lot of creative thought going on. And it coordinates with Neptune and Aries, where new philosophies are coming into being. Maybe even new forms of spirituality. With Neptune and Aries, the emphasis is on individual spirituality. So membership in organized religion, it may dwindle at this point for several years. And Jupiter in Leo, Leo is individual creativity. So that is going to expand and blossom too. And this is another 2 blue star day, a lot of harmony. And this brings us to what I'm now calling the Great Harmony on July 21st, 2026. The late great mundane astrologer Andre Barbeau thought this would be the most harmonious day of the century. And look how close all of these sextiles and trines are. We have Pluto at 4 degrees, Neptune at 4 degrees, Uranus 4 degrees, Jupiter 4 degrees, Chiron at 0 degrees, South Node at 0 degrees, Moon at 0 degrees, North Node at 0 degrees. This is an incredible amount of harmony and planetary coordination. And this can bring lots of new inspirations into the planet. Now, we do have a grand cross with Chiron, Moon, Jupiter, and Pluto, but I think this is only going to serve to energize the harmonious configurations. Each of these planets in the Grand Cross is also involved with these more harmonious configurations. And so this is just going to, I believe, provide some motivation. There's also a Saturn square Mercury. Mercury moves fast. That's going to pass soon, but that creates a little bit of frustration. But I don't have it circled here. We also have Saturn making a sextile to Mars, Mars making a semi-sextile to Mercury. So the Saturn-Mars-Mercury path is the way around the square, the way to deal with the square. Saturn will coordinate well with Mars. So this is structure, coordinating, discipline, coordinating with action. And that will help our left brains, ruled by Mercury, make adjustments to overcome whatever frustration is occurring. So if you are feeling some frustration, take some action in order to change things. Now, the Great Harmony of 2026 is reminiscent of a period from about 578 to 574 BCE, before the Common Era, that saw several conjunctions involving Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto that coincided approximately with the birth of Taoism, Confucianism, and Buddhism, the writing of the Torah during the Babylonian exile for Israel, and some in the writing of some of the Upanishads, and the beginning of the golden age of Greek philosophy. This is just one of the conjunctions that occurred during that period. This one in 577 BCE. But all the coordination between these outer planets here is reminiscent of this period, and we may have great results. It may unfold over a period of several years, but certainly the children born on this day in particular, they could grow up to be extraordinary individuals. Now, on July 26th, the North Node is going to enter Aquarius. Moon is out of bounds. We don't have anything out of bounds on the Great Harmony, but a few days later, Moon goes out of bounds. People want to act independently again. And I have this flagged as a blue star and a green star day. So we'll talk about that green star in a second. But let's see, we have Mars making a square to Venus. I think we'll see another square before this slideshow is over. And Venus It has several meanings. It represents the pleasure principle. When Mars is affecting it, that could manifest as a strong desire for physical pleasures, whether it's romance or doing other things of an active or physical nature that you enjoy. But Venus also rules the right brain. When Venus seeks pleasure and to reduce tension, well, it classifies some things as feeling good, feeling bad. That leads to a value system of what we think is good, what we think is bad. It's a nonverbal way of reasoning. And if Mars is squaring Venus, our right brains are not going to be too terribly happy. There's something that's agitating us at this moment. So some people may get a little angry on this day. We also have Sun and Jupiter opposite Pluto. Pluto is in Aquarius. Sun and Jupiter are in Leo, which has to do more with personal creativity and pleasure and expression. So group activities, something in the collective may be making us feel a little oppressed this day. But at the same time, we have two very nice minor grand trines. We have Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, and Sun, Jupiter, Uranus, and Neptune. So there is a good deal of harmony today. And we even have Chiron still making a trine to the south node, a sextile to the north node. Now, what makes this a green day is the fact that we have Uranus, Sun, and Jupiter both making a quincunx to the moon. A quincunx is an aspect of 150 degrees, and when signs are 150 degrees apart, they don't have a lot in common with one another. They have different elements, different modes, and so adjustments have to be made for them to get along. So, with Uranus, the Sun, and Jupiter making a quincunx to the moon in Capricorn, everything's going to be funneled through the moon. Our minds are going to be rather hyper. With Uranus and Gemini, that's going to last for several years. That's what stimulates all the creativity. Jupiter and Sun in Leo, that focuses on personal pleasure, creativity, recreation. Moon in Capricorn is more about discipline, and the moon has to do with our persona, our personality, and our emotional being, our emotional state of being. So our feelings and emotions are going to have to be making some sort of adjustment on this day. They're going to be feeling pressure to make adjustment at the time that the North Node is entering into Aquarius, which means the South Node is going into Leo. And that's by itself changing the focus for another year and a half. But on this day, emotionally, people feel a need to make some kind of adjustment. Pressure from Uranus and Sun and Jupiter. Then we get to the solar eclipse on August 12th. This is another two blue star day with an awful lot of harmony. This is one of the great days of harmony that we're going to experience this year. We do have Venus opposite Neptune, which can create sort of a fantasy-like environment for people. Could also represent misinformation, illusion, zealousness. At its worst, it could be fears of war that concern us. But could also be pleasant. It could be just sort of fantasizing about relationships with Venus and Libra. And we do have Mercury opposite Pluto, which can create that feeling of oppression. So both our left brain and our right brain are being impacted today. But at the same time, look at all the harmony. Look at all the blue lines over here. We have a Uranus-Venus-Pluto grand trine, a Uranus-Neptune Pluto minor grand trine. We have a Mars-Chiron north node minor grand trine, a Uranus-Venus-Mercury minor grand trine. And we have, let's see, a Neptune, Mercury, Venus, Pluto, mystic rectangle. And I think there may be even one I missed here. Well, we have not only the Uranus-Chiron North Node minor grand trine, but also a Mars-Chiron North Node minor grand trine, but also Mars-Chiron South Node minor grand trine. So there's a lot of harmonious coordination between planets at the time of the solar eclipse. Oh, I should point out too that Mars is out of bounds this day. Fortunately, it has only good aspects, but people are going to be inclined to take independent actions at this point with Mars out of bounds. Then we get to the new moon on September 10th. We have Venus opposite Chiron. This could bring some wounding to people's right brains. At best, it could bring healing if they integrate the energies of Chiron into their right brain. We have Mercury opposite Neptune. At worst, this could bring fears and delusions into people's left brains, but at best, it could bring inspiration and higher spiritual awareness into people's left brains. So again, we have both the left brain and the right brain being impacted this day, but we also have a lot of harmonious aspects. So it's another 2 blue star day. We have, let's see, Chiron, South Node, Venus, North Node, mystic rectangle. Still going on. We have Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, minor grand trine. We have Jupiter trine Saturn. So growth and regulation, again, are coordinating together well. And politically, progressives and conservatives will probably be working together at this time. We have Mars making a sextile to the Sun and the Moon. So we'll be well coordinated when it comes to physical actions and things we want to do. And Pluto, Uranus, and Mercury, let's see, we'll be making a grand trine here. So we actually have a kite formation with Pluto, Uranus, Mercury, and then Neptune at the peak of the kite. So this is when a lot of these higher energies really get funneled poured into our left brain. Also, Pluto is out of bounds. It is going to be out of bounds in the southern latitude for most of the fall. And historically, when that happens, people tend to rise up and protest and take power, demand power for the people. So I'm anticipating more protests in fall of 2026. And Pluto is going to be going out of bounds in the fall for the next several years, I think, for pretty much the rest of the 2020s. When we get to the fall equinox, it's just a green star day. Some of the harmony we experienced in July and August, that's starting to break up and go away. We have Sun opposite Neptune. Neptune is in Aries, and at its worst, this can be fears of war. At its best, this can be individual spirituality, which we integrate with ourself. Higher visions of a spiritual nature that we become one with. So let's go for the best. We have Pluto making a sextile to Neptune, a trine to the Sun. That helps release some of the tension. We have Uranus making a trine to Pluto. That's still going on. We don't, using the orbs that I'm using, we don't complete this Uranus, Neptune, Pluto minor grand trine. Remember, I'm using these harmonic orbs that get tighter as the harmonic increases. So a sextile is a 6 harmonic. So now the orbs are getting closer to 2 degrees, or about 2.5 degrees. But this is a green star day because Chiron and the North Node are making quincunxes to the Sun. And this puts pressure on us to change in some way. And hopefully, Chiron, instead of wounding us in the process, hopefully it will begin to heal us. So, at best, Chiron, receiving some intensification from the North Node, will be putting pressure on something deep inside ourselves at the core of our being to change so that healing and joy can occur. So at its best, at the fall equinox, we will start to make changes deep within. We will begin a process of transforming ourselves, Pluto trine Sun, and we will integrate with these more cosmic feelings of spirituality and oneness. Now, since this is the fall equinox, this sets a tone for the next 3 months. Other things will be going on, obviously, but this will be an underlying tone from the equinox until the winter solstice. And also, Pluto is still out of bounds. Now, when we get to the new moon on October 10th, some of the harmony is returning. We have the Uranus, Saturn, Neptune, Pluto, minor grand trine in effect again. And we also have a Mars, Uranus, Neptune, Saturn, minor grand trine going on. So that's very good. We have a strong square between Mars and Venus. We saw one earlier, I believe, back in August. And Mars is also in opposition to Pluto. Fortunately, it's fading in strength a bit, but it's still there. And this is creating a potential for some aggression or violence, or certainly people feeling upset. Remember, Venus can represent our right brain, and if Mars is making a square to it, our right brains are going to be upset. There will be perhaps something going on that doesn't feel right according to our system of values, and that can make us angry. And the opposition from Pluto can make us feel oppressed by the powers that be. So this is a blue star, red star day. And of course, Pluto is still out of bounds. When we get into November, the new moon on November 8th, we have Chiron in opposition to Venus again. That happens a few times in 2026. So again, it's healing, trying to break through into Venus, something more transcendent that's more joyous and which can heal us. But if we don't integrate with this could bring about some wounding. We also have Mars and Jupiter conjunct each other and the lunar nodal axis, and this can intensify Martian feelings of anger or aggression. But we also have this nice mystic rectangle with Chiron, Mars, Jupiter, South Node, Venus, and the North Node. And we have the Uranus, Neptune, Pluto minor grand trine there. So remember this minor grand trine between Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. We saw it early on in 2026, very strong in July and August. Disappeared for a few weeks, but it is back. This is one of the more prevalent features astrologically this year, along with the Saturn-Neptune conjunction. And as I say, this brings in a lot of higher order thought and thinking and perception into the world. But even though these are harmonious aspects, the old has to be swept away so that the new can take its place. And that can result in the fall of empires as it did in 476 CE when we had a similar configuration and the Western Roman Empire fell. Okay, this takes us to the new moon on December 9th, 2026. And it's both a blue star and a red star day. On the harmonious side, we have the Uranus, Neptune, Pluto minor grand trine, Saturn, Neptune, Pluto, Mercury minor grand trine right here. We have Mars sextile Venus. So whatever was going on with Mars square Venus, now it's pretty much resolved. And people are ready for physical pleasure and recreation again, whether it's romance or sports or traveling or something else. And we have Chiron trine Jupiter in the South Node, and that is going to help bring in healing and more of a feeling of transcendence into the world. More people will go beyond the physical, visible world they see and gain more perception of the invisible, more joyous, more unified spiritual realm. But we do have a few tensions. We have Pluto square Venus, which is going to make people feel oppressed or as if they have to go through something very hard at this particular moment. Fortunately, Venus moves relatively quickly. It will last just a few days. But our right brains will feel oppressed. And we have a T-square between Mars, Uranus, and Mercury. At its best, this could be very creative thought that it translates into action. At its worst, this can just be a lot of sudden aggression taking place in the world. But at its best, with Mars and Virgo, we could take the practical actions that are needed in order to implement some type of creative invention and more visionary thinking. Okay, so again, let's hope for the best. Also on this day, we have Moon out of bounds, which means people will be walking their own path. And we have Pluto still out of bounds, meaning people are still rebelling and want the power to be in their hands. And this takes us finally to the winter solstice on December 21st, 2026, and I have it marked as a 2 blue star day. We have a couple of tensions. Let's see. We have Sun square Neptune. So there can be some fogginess in people's lives at this moment, some delusions or misinformations that are affecting them. We have Jupiter conjunct the lunar nodal axis. The lunar nodal axis always intensifies things. Our drive to grow and expand, that could be a little overstimulated. And we have the moon square Jupiter. Moon is in Taurus, which is ruled by Venus. So there could be a tendency at this time to, for example, overspend, overdo things, overeat, overindulge in pleasures. This happens right before Christmas, so that's a time when people often overindulge anyway. But we have not only the Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, minor grand trine still in effect, but we also have a Chiron, Mercury, Sun, Jupiter, South Node grand trine. That is going to be very nice. That is going to help bring a lot of healing and spiritual transcendence to people. Healing to most, spiritual transcendence to some. We have Moon and Mercury out of bounds, so people's personalities and left brains are going to be, again, walking their own path on this day. So we'll end the year on a good note, and it will be quite an extraordinary year. Saturn and Neptune will cause a lot of old structures to go away. And by the way, things begin at least a year before the exact conjunction, and we had a near conjunction throughout all of summer of 2025. So the dissolution of structures really began in 2025, and you see that very clearly in America and the way Trump began to change things in 2025, and his tariffs have affected trade policies around the world. So we are already experiencing this dissolution of structures and new philosophies coming in, not necessarily good, not necessarily bad, could be either, could affect different countries differently, but these things are already happening, and we expect it to intensify probably in 2026 and maybe continue beyond. So that has been going on. The Uranus, Neptune, Pluto minor grand trine first formed in summer of 2025 in July, and that is going to intensify in strength as that and other harmonious configurations bring new energies into the planet and into people's minds. Okay, we'll look at a few other things before I end. Now, regardless of which July 1776 chart you use for America, the year will probably begin in America with people feeling rebellious and wounded economically. Wounding to the people will probably intensify in May and November, and frustrations may increase and boil over in July and August. So I'm looking at some hard transits that will be in common for both the July 2nd, 1776 chart and the July 4th, 1776 Sibley chart. July 2nd is when the Declaration of Independence was actually passed by the Continental Congress. So that's an important day. July 4th is when it was printed and went public. That's an important date. I see the Sibley chart as representing more America's outer persona, and the July 2nd chart, which I tend to use a little bit more often, as representing what's really going on inside with America. But we have some fairly common hard aspects occurring in both charts. So in both of them, we have this fairly lengthy period from mid-January through almost to the end of April, where the transiting lunar nodal axis will be squaring America's Uranus. And that really stirs up feelings of rebellion and also war and aggression in America. So internal rebellion, external war, or even internal conflict are very likely in this period. And certainly in the first part of the year, if not beyond, people are going to face the stark reality of huge increases in health insurance premiums. On March 20th, just a couple of days before this square, North Node square Uranus becomes exact, we'll have transiting Chiron square natal Mercury. That can wound the economy. And then for the rest of the year, we have Chiron square Pluto. In America's chart, Pluto can represent the people's power, because the country, the government is designed so that power resides in the hands of the people, even though that's been snatched away a lot. But America's power, or the people's power, can be wounded in April and May, and later on in October, November, December, and this is going to be around the time of the midterm elections. Very interesting. This is followed by Saturn square Sun. Sun in a country's chart usually represents the ruler. So Trump can be feeling very restricted in May and also in October. And then we have something very rare involving a Saturn transit occurring in July and August. Transiting Saturn will be in opposition to natal Saturn. That transit this time around is going to last much, much longer than usual. And we actually get two exact oppositions. You see just the date for one here, but we'll have an exact opposition, I believe, on July 23rd and July 29th. What's happening is Saturn is slowing down to turn retrograde. So in between 23rd and 29th, it goes from direct to retrograde. And because it's slowing down, in both charts, we get this enormous span of time that this opposition will be in effect with the 1-degree orb. It's a little over 2 months. That is incredible. And this can be a time where America feels very restricted. It's often a time where we have to pay off our karmic debts. We reap what we have sown, and we have to pay the price for our actions. So it's not uncommon to get natural disasters or mass shootings, other kinds of sorrowful events occurring during this period. Now, this is happening at a really interesting time because remember that July 21st is the day I called the Great Harmony. And we also had a very harmonious solar eclipse, I believe, on August 12th. This whole period, July and August, has very harmonious configurations for the world in general, but for America in particular. We're going to be experiencing some sort of contraction, some sort of restriction, some sort of frustration. Also, I haven't been talking about Trump in this presentation, but I'll point out that Trump's Chiron is exactly conjunct to the degree with America's natal Saturn. And this is why he has wounded the structure of American democracy and government so much. Of course, the supporters will see that as merely draining the swamp, but regardless of what you call it, it's because his Chiron is conjunct America's Saturn exact to the degree that so many of these structures have changed under him. And in 2025, his progressed Mars was at 14 degrees of the sign that Chiron and America's Saturn are in. And so 14 degrees Libra. And so 2025 saw his wounding or dismantling of America's structures happening on steroids. Okay, now I bring this up because since transiting Saturn will be opposite natal Saturn, since Trump's Chiron is conjunct America's natal Saturn, transiting Saturn is going to be opposite Trump's natal Chiron also for a little over 2 months. And if Trump is still around, and I say if because he's going to turn 80 in June of 2026, and he seems to be more and more erratic. He has these squares to Mars and his ascendant from Uranus. He's not only getting more erratic, but looking more mentally unstable. So you have to wonder, given his mental instability, his advanced age, will he be alive at this time? Will he still be president? Will he get so bad that the 25th Amendment is invoked and he's removed from the presidency? Those are possibilities. I'm not discounting them. But if he's still in the Oval Office at this time, then this could be a time of great wounding, personally, financially, since Chiron is in his second house. Resource-wise, some kind of big wounding can occur for Trump from July through August if he is indeed still around. Okay. Now, I also want to mention there are risks of increased conflict and aggression both abroad and internally for America in 2025. And in both the July 2nd chart and the July 4th chart, progress Sun is squaring natal Mars. In the July 2nd chart, it peaks on November 12th, again, around the time of the midterm elections. And let me go back one slide. We also had Chiron square Pluto on November 11th, exact. About that same time. In the Sibley chart, it's exact on the 12th. So there is really heightened risk for aggression, for war, for wounding around November 11th and 12th, around the time of the midterm elections in America. And in the July 4th chart, progress Sun square Mars will be exact on March 4th. So violence, aggression could occur on one day or the other. It could peak on both days, both dates. I've written here with progress Sun square natal Mars, Uranus having moved into Gemini, Neptune having moved into Aries, to where it was at the start of the American Civil War, the likelihood of conflict at home or abroad for America, misspelled there, I'll change that later, it really increases this year. So keep an eye out for that. We've been seeing the build up to this as we've been going through the second half of the year 2025. Began probably with bombing in Iran that we did, and then we started blowing up small boats off the coast of Venezuela, threatening Venezuela with war. More recently, we have also done bombing in Nigeria. So, as I say, astrology doesn't work, and yet surprisingly, history unfolds according to astrology, time and time again. There you go. Now, America's going to have a rough ride for the next few years. I'm not really going to talk now about the years following 2026, but just as America is having a rough ride, Russia is going to have a rough ride too. And I mentioned the last video, I talked about how big changes always tend to occur in Russia whenever there is a Saturn-Neptune conjunction, such as the one that occurs on February 20th of 2026. But in addition to that, transiting Pluto is going to be conjunct natal Saturn for an extraordinary period of time from about mid-February all the way into the first week of August with a 1-degree orb. And Pluto can be death and destruction. Saturn represents structures. There could be a lot of structures in Russia, physical structures or the structure of the government that is destroyed at this point. And if this little chart I have here for Russia's reincorporation in 1991 is accurate, then with Saturn in the 7th house, this could be a destruction of the structure of its relationship with other countries. It could be Russia destroying infrastructure in other countries like it's doing in Ukraine. That could intensify. It could expand into other countries, but there's something having to do with destruction of infrastructure within or without of Russia. That happens over an extended length of time in 2026, and this is also going to go into 2027. The years that follow for Russia also indicate a very rough ride for them. Saturn square Sun, that can affect the ruler, Putin. Neptune square Sun, that's going to last for quite a while. That could be a confused state of mind for Putin. It could be assassination attempts on Putin. And Uranus squaring the Moon, the people could be feeling very rebellious and in the mood for revolution. So Pluto conjunct Saturn could indicate the destruction of Russia's infrastructure or that of others. Saturn and Neptune square the Sun could spell trouble for Putin and possible assassination attempts. And Uranus square the Moon could put the people in the mood for a revolution. Okay, I want to show you a couple of other things before I stop. I sat down and I asked artificial intelligence, specifically Microsoft Copilot, what its predictions were for 2026. And they really coincide a lot with the astrological outlook for 2026. So I just want to read the parts that I've put in red here. The global mood, a year of acceleration. 2026 has the feel of a threshold year, not an endpoint, but a hinge. Many long-building pressures hit inflection points. Technology outpaces regulation. Climate volatility becomes economically unavoidable. Demographic shifts reshape labor markets. Political polarization reaches a structural rather than emotional phase. It's a year where the world feels like it's moving faster than institutions can adapt. Also, 2026 is when AI stops being new and becomes infrastructure. AI co-pilots are going to be embedded in everything. We're going to see more synthetic media where all or parts of it are generated by artificial intelligence. Quantum adjacent breakthroughs. I think artificial intelligence is going to help us make even more breakthroughs in quantum computing and other areas of science. Biotech acceleration is also going to probably advance very rapidly in 2026. Climate and environment, the era of cascading effects. 2026 is not the year of climate catastrophe, but it is the year when insurance markets in multiple countries begin withdrawing from high-risk zones. Water scarcity becomes a geopolitical issue in at least 3 regions. I've read stories that Tehran may soon run out of water, and that capital city in Iran may have to be abandoned. Extreme weather events become economically defining rather than just episodic, and the conversation shifts from prevention to adaptation. Geopolitics, a multipolar, unsettled landscape. The US-China competition stabilizes into a long-term rivalry. Europe faces internal fragmentation pressures. Middle East realignments continue. Overall, no world war, but no world stability. Economics, a two-speed global economy. 2026 is the year of divergence. Countries with strong tech sectors grow faster. Countries dependent on commodities or tourism face volatility. Inflation is no longer the headline story. Productivity and automation displacement are. Labor markets begin to feel the first real effects of AI substitution. We're starting to see that happen in America. Not mass unemployment, but mass restructuring. Okay, culture, a return to meaning, myth, and identity. We'll see a generational divide between analog nostalgic and AI native identities. And it's a year when people ask, what does it mean to be human in an age of intelligent machines? Science and space, a quiet but important year. And in particular, fusion research hits another milestone, still not commercial, but undeniably closer. So to wrap it up, 2026 is a liminal year, a crossing. Not the crisis, not the resolution, but the bridge between eras. A year when systems strain, new structures emerge, old narratives collapse, new myths are born. It's the kind of year historians later describe as the beginning of the shift. My goodness, this is exactly what I described to you with respect to this Saturn-Neptune conjunction occurring in the first degree of Aries, which hasn't happened at that position for 6,000 years. I've talked about old structures dissolving, new ones emerging, new myths replacing the old ones. We're leaving one era behind, entering another one. I call this the year that everything changes. Artificial intelligence calls it the beginning of the shift. The same thing, just said with different words. Now, I consulted one other authority on changes that might occur in 2026. I consulted the I Ching, and it was a very interesting reading. The first hexagram, here it says hexagram 2, Earth over Earth. This hexagram is often called the receptive, and to me that means that the world in 2026, it's going to receive the consequences of its actions over the past several years, whether those consequences are war or climate change, drought, starvation, economic turmoil. Could happen this year. I expect sometime in the next few years that we may have some severe economic problems, maybe a global economic collapse even, or maybe just a very sharp fall in global stock markets. I think it's more likely to happen after 2026 than in 2026. But nonetheless, 2026, I think, is a year in which we will be receiving the consequences of our past actions from the end of World War II to now. And there's one changing line at the bottom, and it reads, "The ice is coming. Frost is underfoot, but soon there will be ice. Pay attention to problems now, as they are warnings of even greater problems yet to come. Issues addressed at this early stage will be much easier to deal with." So the ice comes, the frost appears in 2026. If we don't take corrective actions, then we will face this ice will or frost will be followed by a very hard winter. But things are changing into hexagram 24, which is called the turning point. If we do go into a hard winter, eventually the light will return and start to increase again. But just as astrology says that 2026 is going to be a turning point, a shift from one era to another, just as artificial intelligence is saying the same thing, through the synchronicity of the I Ching, we're getting the exact same message. So, all of the beneficial astrological aspects that occur in the second half of 2026, they give me some hope. The fact that most of the outer planets are in waxing rather than waning aspects with one another also give me hope that we are engaged in the beginnings, the early phases of new cycles, the growth phase, not the decaying phase. But we are going to be going through major changes this year that we may see happen suddenly, or we may pinpoint this as the year of the shift in retrospect. And we saw that in certain times of the year, particularly around April 17th, there may be a lot more saber rattling. There may be increased likelihood of aggression and conflict. But the first half of the year is maybe a little bit more austere as things break down. The second half of the year may be better, and we may see more things building up and people opening up their minds to higher states of awareness and being. So, as Dickens said, it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. I'm hoping that the best of times will eventually lie ahead. Okay, here's a summary. In summary, we're at a great turning point for humanity, the greatest we will ever experience in our lifetimes. The year will be dominated by the Saturn-Neptune conjunction, intertwined with the Uranus-Saturn-Neptune-Pluto minor grand trine. Old structures are going to quickly dissolve. New ideologies and myths will replace the old. Technology and invention will progress rapidly. Our frequencies are entering the consciousness of people and will change their perspective, but the old has to be swept away before the new can enter. The more spiritually in tune we are, the more we might advance at this time. Both the American and Russian empires may fall in some sense over the next few years. America may become embroiled in conflicts both at home and abroad. Putin's days or years may be numbered. The children born during the favorable times of this year will grow up with incredible gifts. The first half of the year will be characterized by dissolution and some difficulties, while the second half will be characterized by transcendence and technological growth. That is it. Let me stop sharing. And I'm back. And I'll leave you with one final thought. I think one of the best things we can do as individuals is to make a personal spiritual connection each day. I'm not referring necessarily to being to just getting more involved with activities as you're at your church or synagogue or mosque, even though those can be beneficial. I'm talking about going deep within through prayer or meditation, finding your innermost core, becoming one with that still small voice within, what feels like the core of your being and the source of your life and your spirituality. The more that each of us individually can return to that point, the more all of us will be able to return to that point. As each individual returns to that point, because we're actually connected with everyone else and everything, our experience of oneness and connection will reverberate throughout the cosmos, throughout humanity, and it will help everyone else achieve that same connection with a deep inner spirituality. And that, I think, is the most important thing we can do to help bring about a positive change. At the same time, we have to engage not only in inner prayer or meditation, but outward good actions. So I encourage everyone to give a little each month to the food bank or contribute a little bit regularly to whatever charity is doing good work out there to help change the world. And if you go to the store or go to your place of work, greet everyone with a smile. Treat everyone with kindness. There has been so much turmoil in the world this past year and years leading up to it. But each of us can add a drop of kindness to this world, and each of us can make a spiritual connection each day. And the more that individuals do this, the more likely it is that we will all do this. Okay, well, that is what I am anticipating overall for 2026. The year is about to begin. We'll see what happens. I hope it goes well for all of us and that it ends well for all of us. In the meantime, I'll just say, so long and be well.